In 2020, the world shut down. Governments closed borders. Scientists raced to build vaccines in record time. Hospitals filled. Supply chains collapsed. And even with all of that, the internet, modern medicine, ventilators, global coordination, real-time data, millions of people still died. Now imagine facing something like that 50,000 years ago. No doctors, no hospitals, no understanding of what a virus even was, no concept of infection, of contagion, of invisible particles moving through the air. You couldn't see the threat. You couldn't name it. You couldn't explain why perfectly healthy people were suddenly dying around you in the night. And yet your ancestors survived. Not once, not twice, but over and over again, across hundreds of thousands of years, through outbreaks that should have wiped them out entirely. How? To understand this, you have to first understand what ancient life actually looked like. For most of human history, humans lived in small bands of 20 to 50 people, constantly moving. No permanent settlements, no cities, no dense populations packed together in streets and markets and temples. This matters enormously, because viruses spread through contact. And contact, for most of human history, was limited. When a virus hit a small band of hunter-gatherers, it had nowhere to go. It could tear through the group, and it often did. But once the group was infected, the virus ran out of new hosts. It couldn't jump to the next village, because there was no next village within walking distance for weeks. It couldn't spread through trade routes, because trade routes barely existed. It couldn't travel by ship or caravan to another continent. The same thing that made ancient life brutal, the isolation, the small numbers, the constant movement, accidentally acted as a natural quarantine system. Geography was the first vaccine. But isolation alone doesn't explain everything, because outbreaks did happen. Diseases did sweep through ancient populations. We know this from the bones. Paleopathologists, scientists who study ancient disease through skeletal remains, have found evidence of tuberculosis, leprosy, and various infections in bones tens of thousands of years old. Ancient humans were not living in a disease-free paradise. They were getting sick, regularly. So when disease arrived, what did they actually do? The answer is more sophisticated than you might expect. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer societies, groups whose lifestyle most closely mirrors our ancient ancestors, have found consistent patterns in how they respond to serious illness. Sick individuals are instinctively separated from the group, not cruelly, not abandoned, but moved to the edges of camp, given food and water, cared for, but kept away from the healthy. This behavior appears across cultures with no contact with each other, which strongly suggests it is ancient, deeply built into human social instinct. Your ancestors didn't know what a germ was, but they understood, at some intuitive level, that whatever was killing people seemed to spread through closeness. And they acted on that understanding. Think about how extraordinary that is. Quarantine, the same principle that governments enforced in 2020, was being practiced by humans who had no science, no microscopes, no virology, just pattern recognition and survival instinct. But the most powerful weapon ancient humans had against disease wasn't behavior. It was their immune systems. Modern humans carry the genetic fingerprints of every plague our ancestors survived. Every outbreak that swept through an ancient population killed the most vulnerable and left behind the survivors. Those survivors had immune systems slightly better equipped to handle that particular threat. They had children. Those children inherited slightly stronger defenses. Generation after generation, natural selection quietly rebuilt the human immune system from the inside out. Scientists studying ancient DNA have found direct evidence of this. By comparing the genomes of ancient humans to modern ones, researchers have identified specific immune genes that show dramatic signs of rapid evolution. Genes that changed faster than almost anything else in the human genome, driven by the pressure of ancient disease. Your immune system is not factory standard equipment. It is a weapon forged across hundreds of thousands of years of biological warfare, upgraded by every outbreak your ancestors survived. Every time a plague swept through ancient populations, the survivors passed something forward. Not just life, not just children, but armor. And then there was fire. One of the most underappreciated public health interventions in human history happened roughly 400,000 years ago, when humans began cooking food regularly. Cooking kills pathogens, bacteria, parasites, Viruses, heat destroys them. Before cooking, ancient humans eating raw meat were constantly exposed to a staggering range of biological threats. After cooking, many of those threats simply vanished from their food supply. Ancient humans didn't cook food because they understood germ theory. They cooked it because it tasted better, was easier to chew, and provided more calories. But the side effect, a dramatic reduction in foodborne disease, may have been one of the most significant public health events in our entire evolutionary history. Accidental, enormously consequential, exactly like so much of human survival. Water tells a similar story. Ancient humans instinctively sought moving water over standing water. Not because they understood bacterial contamination, but because moving water smelled better, tasted better, and animals seemed healthier near it. Rivers and streams over stagnant pools. They were right, for reasons they couldn't articulate. Moving water carries far fewer pathogens than standing water. Choosing it instinctively reduced exposure to waterborne disease dramatically. Humans were solving public health problems thousands of years before public health existed as a concept. Here is where it gets strange. Scientists studying the DNA of ancient viruses, extracted from permafrost, from ancient bones, from preserved remains, have discovered something remarkable. Many of the viruses that devastated ancient populations left permanent marks inside the human genome. About 8% of your DNA is made up of ancient viral sequences, remnants of infections so old that the viruses that caused them no longer exist. Your genome is, in part, a graveyard of ancient plagues. But some of those ancient viral fragments are not just passengers. Researchers have found that some repurposed viral DNA now plays active roles in human biology, regulating immune responses, influencing brain development, even playing a role in how the placenta works during pregnancy. The viruses that nearly destroyed us became part of us, integrated so deeply into our biology that we now depend on them. Not every ancient outbreak ended well. Geneticists studying human DNA have found evidence of at least one catastrophic population collapse deep in our past. Roughly 900,000 years ago, the human population may have dropped to as few as 1,280 breeding individuals. For approximately 117,000 years, our entire species teetered on the edge of extinction. The cause is still debated. Climate, habitat loss, disease, likely some combination of all three. But the genetic signal is clear. There was a moment when almost everyone died. We survived by a margin so narrow it is almost impossible to comprehend. Think about that the next time someone tells you humans are inevitably dominant. We came extraordinarily close to disappearing entirely. The world almost continued without us. What eventually changed everything was not medicine. It was agriculture. When humans began farming around 12,000 years ago, everything about disease shifted, and mostly for the worse, at first. Settlements grew. Populations densified. Animals were kept close to humans. Sewage accumulated. Water sources became contaminated. The transition to farming may have been the single most catastrophic event in human health history. Tuberculosis, smallpox, measles, influenza, many of the diseases that defined human suffering for thousands of years emerged or accelerated after agriculture. Skeletons from early farming communities showed dramatically worse health than the hunter-gatherers who came before them. Cities made us vulnerable in entirely new ways. And it took thousands more years of accumulated suffering and millions of deaths before humans slowly, painfully, began to understand why. Tonight, somewhere in a laboratory, scientists are scanning databases for the next potential pandemic, tracking mutation patterns, running models, preparing responses. And 50,000 years ago, somewhere in the dark, a hunter-gatherer noticed that the people sleeping closest to the sick ones were dying first, and quietly, without words for what they were doing, moved their sleeping spot further away. No theory, no science, just a pattern noticed in the firelight, and an instinct that said, move. The distance between that moment and a modern epidemiologist is enormous. And yet the core impulse is identical. Something invisible is killing us. Figure out how it spreads, and get away from it. Your ancestors didn't survive because they were lucky. They survived because they were relentlessly, instinctively, stubbornly good at staying alive. And every morning you wake up healthy is, in some small way, the result of everything they endured. But now you know how.